Welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast, where we're over here exploring the unfiltered truths of fatherhood, self-care, mental health, and just navigating the chaos of everyday life. Hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And on today's episode, I have Kevin Palmieri from Next Level University. How's it going today?
I am living the dream. We're recording this on a Friday, so I'm grateful, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I'm excited to see where we end up today, my friend.
Awesome. Well, thank you. First of all, for those of you who don't know, give us a little bit of background about who you are and NLU, of course, and kind of how you got there, because there's something I want to mention a little after that, but
Yeah.
it needs some context from you.
So today I am the host and the founder of Next Level University. We have a global top 100 podcasts with 1,702 episodes, I think, as of today, listeners in 170 plus countries. And we recently crossed the million listen and $1 million mark in the business and the podcast, which was amazing and a dream come true. And I genuinely didn't think we'd get here. But yeah, I have very, very humble beginnings. I didn't go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do for most of my life. And I would say I achieved quote unquote success. I found out that rock bottom kind of sucks. And then I also, after that, found out that rock bottom has a basement if you keep digging. So where we are today, Richard, is it's something that I don't take lightly, because I genuinely didn't think I'd be where I am today. And I try to show up with the energy. I try to show up with the gratitude, and it's always my goal.
Well, congratulations on 1 million listens and
Thank
$1
you.
million. And
Thank you.
the reason this is significant to me was because I have to admit that the other day when I heard it, and then I heard you guys talking about it like on the way, and then I saw the post where it actually happened. And I have to admit that my thought process around money has been a little distorted. Maybe thinking, a lot of people with money use it to do bad things, or they can't be trusted and whatnot.
Mm.
But whenever I heard you guys talking about it, crossing that threshold of 1 million listens and $1 million, it occurred to me in that moment, in that exact moment, I was like, wow, they've, in healthcare, we were always taught to kind of, you want to get credit for the work you do. So you use keywords at key times. Like you may say, oh, can I help you find this? That way, when you answer the survey, were they helpful? They say yes.
Mm.
And I thought initially you guys were, using this keyword like, hey, we're going to give ourselves credit for the work that we've done, for the milestones we've reached, which is great. But from a listener point of view and kind of understanding this, it was the first time I ever transformed in my brain and had the thought of, you guys added $1 million worth of value to the
Mm.
world. And I think that that's the important distinction when, if you have a distorted view of money or some hangups around it, like I might, understanding that concept, $1 million of adding value, because you and Alan could have invested in McDonald's franchise and made $1 million, but it doesn't guarantee that you would have added any value to the world.
Mm.
So I just want to say congratulations, and I
Thank you.
think it's totally awesome. And I understand what that 1 million means to you guys.
I appreciate that. And I think that's wonderful introspection. I do. I think I haven't responded to your comment yet, but I saw that you commented. And even when I saw that, I was like, that's exactly it. There was a little piece of me, Richard, that was afraid to share it, because I don't ever want to come off as arrogant. I don't ever want to come off as a braggadocious. I literally waited a week. I waited over a week to do the post because it didn't feel right yet. It just didn't. I was like, I don't want to do it today. I don't feel it today. I don't feel like celebrating today. I don't want to fake it. My wife and I had the conversation. She said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm probably not going to do anything. I know I should get balloons that say $1 million and $1 million, or a cake. I don't think that's who I am, and I don't think I want to do it. So sometimes it's very interesting how sometimes when we do cross those key thresholds that we've been playing for so long, you learn more about yourself in ways that you didn't think you were going to. And I think that's why the journey is so powerful, because I never thought I was going to get here, but the person who I had to become in order to get here is probably the reason I don't really care about celebrating it. And it's that wonky thing. And just one more thing I'll add, and maybe this will be more for you than anyone else, but I said this to Alan behind the scenes. I said, isn't it weird how the milestones we just crossed are some people's biggest goals and biggest dreams, but you and I now have just completely shifted our goals and our dreams, and we're not even celebrating? Isn't it wild, that perspective, that in many people's eyes we're successful, but we're not in our own? And not to a detriment. I like that. We have very high standards, but you never know. Where you are might quite literally be someone else's dream, and maybe it would benefit us all a little bit more to stop and smell the roses along the way.
Well, so speaking of that, how, so we're going to go from 1 million listens and $1 million, but where did that start? You said you didn't go to college, and before you embarked on this leveling up, creating Next Level University, what were you doing before that, and what caused that transition to say, I've had enough of this, whether it was the corporate world, whatever, and I need to do my own thing?
Mm. Yeah, when I was like 22 or 23, I really felt like a loser, for lack of better phrasing. I hadn't gone to college. At that point, I had worked as a gas station attendant. I had worked cleaning hospital bathrooms and floors and toilets. I was a truck driver, forklift operator, on-call firefighter for a very short period of time, HVAC, a bunch of stuff. And I was feeling like I was going to be trapped doing jobs that I hated for the rest of my life. And I thought I made a giant mistake not going to college, for sure. And I ended up getting a job by luck, not by skill, not by reverse engineering it, not by strategy, in an industry called weatherization. And it was our job to go into large buildings, primarily schools, and make them more energy efficient. So I would pack my suitcase on Saturday. Sunday night, I would get in the van, the work van, and I would drive anywhere up and down the East Coast of the United States, whether that's New Hampshire, Maine, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Virginia, wherever. But I was happy about it because I was making good money. I went from making $15 an hour to making $60 an hour. So here I am in my early 20s, 23, 24, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. Everything worked out exactly how it was supposed to. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be somewhat financially free, and I'm going to make more money than I ever thought. So I did that job for a couple of years, and I did well. But everything kind of culminated when I was at 25, 26 in that region. Because if you looked from the outside looking in, you would see me, who just competed in and won a bodybuilding show. So I was in the best shape I will ever be in, for sure. I'm never going to look like that again. I'm not willing to suffer. My girlfriend at the time was a model. I had a sports car. I had a new apartment. I had this high-paying job. You would have assumed that I had it all together and I was super confident and I was super healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I just wasn't. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was riding the struggle bus. So one day, my girlfriend came to me and she said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I don't feel like you're the man that can support me and the goals and the dreams that I have. I have to go." And that was the right choice. She made the right choice. She did exactly what she should have done. When she left, though, that was my initial rock bottom. No, how is anybody going to love this version of me? I have all these things and I can't be happy. Am I ever going to be able to be happy? What am I going to do? What do I do with this? I had a very short stint on, I should work on myself. That's what I should do. I should work on myself. But then, Richard, what happened was I said, well, what if I just go make a boatload of money instead? Maybe I just haven't made the right amount of money to be happy. Let's go with that. That one sounds better. So the next year starts. I get a promotion at my job. So now I'm a foreman. So I'm running these really big jobs. And then I proceeded to live on the road for the next 10 months. Every single week for the next 10 months, I would pack my suitcase. I'd leave on Sunday and I'd get home Friday or Saturday morning, depending on how long the drive was. But I was loving it because I was making money and I felt more successful and I was accomplishing these goals and I thought this was the answer. So we get to the end of that year and I'm standing at my kitchen table. I don't have chairs because my ex-girlfriend, they were her chairs and she took them. And I was never home, so I'm not going to buy chairs. It doesn't matter. I was standing there. I slid open my final pay stub of the year and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. And as many emotions as I thought I was going to feel, I didn't. I felt proud. I felt more certain because my bank account was bigger. Internally, I felt no different. If anything, I felt worse because I realized that for most of my life, and especially that year, I had lived unconsciously. I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't know why I do the things I do. I don't do the things I don't. I have no idea who I am. So shortly thereafter, I realized that the opposite of unconscious, which is the way I was living my life, is hyperconscious. So in 2017, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Much like you, and I can tell, I fell in love with podcasting, much like you have fallen in love with podcasting. But also, as you know, in the beginning, there aren't people lining up that want to give you money. No. Richard, I love you. Here's money to pay your bills. Keep podcasting, my friend. Keep doing it. So I had to keep going to this job. And I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job site early. I start showing up late. I've already reached the pinnacle of what I'm going to reach. I don't want to travel for another 10 months. Talk about homesick. Every time I pack my bag and leave, I get that anxious, empty feeling in my stomach. I don't want to do this anymore. But I had to keep doing it to pay the bills. So eventually it got to the point where I was in a hotel room in New Jersey, and we worked a lot in New Jersey. I hate New Jersey. No offense to anybody who lives there. Like I said, I'm not a fan of it. My alarm clock went off at 5:15 or 5:30. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots, as I had done 1,000 times before. But that morning, it was different. It seemed like, it felt like, it sounded like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one is on a different station. And one is saying you're stuck here forever. Kev, you're an underdog. You made it way further than you were supposed to. Do not mess this up. Do not mess this up. This would be the dumbest thing ever. If you did have the courage or stupidity to leave this job, what would your friends think? Get a ton of significance from money. Right? I grew up without money. Now I have money. I don't want to lose it. What would your family think? Your family's proud of you. I don't want to let my family down. And then the biggest, loudest one for me, Richard, was, do you really think you're going to be a successful podcaster? You didn't have a plan A. You didn't have a plan B. I think I already fell into plan C. I don't know if they make plans after that. I don't know if there's a plan D. So in that moment, I thought to myself, in this dark, crusty hotel room, if I just take my life, I'll take my problems with me. And I won't have to worry about any of this. I won't have to do any of the work. I won't have to figure out any of this. And this will all just fade away. And I won't have to worry about it. I'm very blessed because I have amazing people in my life. I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed. I genuinely have amazing humans in my life. So I reached out to one of those amazing humans, who is now my business partner and the co-host of the podcast, Alan. And I said, hey, man, I'm having a really hard time. I'm having these dark thoughts, these dark feelings, these dark emotions. I don't know what to do, man. I feel so trapped. I feel so stuck. I feel helpless, hopeless. I don't know what to do. And he said many things. He's long-winded. That's where I get it from now. I have adopted that for sure from him. He said, Kev, over the last couple of years, your awareness, hyperconscious, has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. So one of the wisest things ever of all time. So I ended up leaving my job 3 or 4 months later. And then we started this journey together of, okay, I have a podcast. You want to be a speaker? Let's do this together. Let's partner up. We'll do episodes together. We'll start a business together. And you and I will try to have the most successful, holistic self-improvement podcast on the planet. And here we are 6 years later. I left in 2018. So 6 years later, and that's what we're doing. Now we do an episode every day, and this is what we get to do for a living, and we get to help so many people, and I get to talk to amazing people like you all the time, which is another huge benefit that I never expected.
That's so awesome, because I actually I'd written down, because I'd heard it in another episode, but I wanted to, what did Alan say? And so now I have the answer to that. But one of the questions I had around that was, have have those thoughts ever crept back in? Did you ever have a history of like suicidal ideations or anything like that, or was it just a matter of that moment?
No, that was the second time. So when I probably the year before my girlfriend left me, I was off of work one day because we would have contracts and then we would have like a day or two off and I would just hang out because that was what we did. It was cool. I like a day off. I'm all for it. And I was home alone one day. We lived with another couple in this really nice 3-story apartment in Boston, just outside of Boston. And I was home alone one day. I was playing Call of Duty, and I just remember having this thought of everything seems so dull and so gray and so bland and so dark. If this is the future, if this is what life is going to be for me, I don't know if I want to do it. I wasn't planning anything, I wasn't
Right.
thinking about it, but it was very much the realization of if this is what life is, I'm not going to ever be excited to live it. And I told my girlfriend at the time when she came home, and she suggested therapy. And my ego flared, and I said, "Oh, no, 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 I'm fine. I'm good. I'm a man, tattooed bodybuilder. I don't need therapy. I'm gonna be fine. Just a moment of weakness. That's all." So she ended up convincing me to go to therapy. One of the best things I ever did, for sure. So that was actually probably the second or third time I ever had thoughts like that. No, I've never had thoughts like that since, and I don't know why. If you said what are the three reasons you haven't since, I don't know. I think I'm unreasonably fulfilled. I feel loved all the time. Again, I'm surrounded by amazing people. I'm not even successful. I don't think that really matters that much. I mean, once you get to a certain point where you can pay your bills, that's awesome. But I think it's the fulfillment. I'm super fulfilled, and maybe this is the best answer. I'm actually excited for the future. I was never excited for the future before. I had a very humbling moment a couple of years ago where I literally thought to myself, I really hope I don't die in the next like 10 years because I'm super excited for what happens after 10 years. And I don't know if that was I don't know if that's a normal thought. I don't know if people think that. I don't know. But that was the first time I had ever really thought that. So I think that's the answer is I'm actually genuinely as excited for the future, if not more excited for the future than I am for the present. And that just isn't something I had before.
Oh, that's awesome. I
Yeah.
think fulfillment definitely, at least in my life, has played huge parts kind of similarly.
Mm,
In that, before I started podcasting, I would kind of have some of those thoughts. And,
mm,
I don't know if it was maybe it was a little lack of purpose, lack of fulfillment. But, I think for me, one of the key factors was, if you're a parent and I have children, if you do that, then there's a 1 in 3 chance that your child will do that.
mm,
And so for me, I was like, no, because part of, my journey and part of podcasting too, and being open, being vulnerable, talking about the mistakes I make or have made are mostly because I do not want my children subject to the same pain that I've gone through. I don't want them to make the same mistakes. Now, I know they're going to make mistakes, but if they can heed some warnings and, anytime I ever feel embarrassed about what I've said or what I've put out that's going to live on the airways forever, I always say,
mm,
well, it's going to be a place that, the kids can go back and listen to it if they ever need to hear it,
mm.
should I happen to not be around. But um, so we've gone from kind of where you were to kind of where you are. And what I want to do is I want to kind of compare and contrast um, the the differences in how when you were coming up and making this happen. I'm sure a lot like me, you're go, go, go. You want to say yes to everything. Now that you're 6 years down the road, you're established, you've crossed some huge milestones. Um, how how do you approach things different in terms of, let's say, balance of, because one of the things I've been cognizant of since joining Podmatch and kind of getting a little bit overwhelmed
Mm.
is to carve out my schedule. I set 36 hours aside. This is the time I can podcast. Um, it's what I allow myself. If I don't use it all, I can use it to, listen to other shows, research, whatever. But how is your schedule different from when you started? How do you manage that?
Let me jump back. Let me think back. In the very beginning, it was almost like I had so much time to do back office work, but I didn't have any back office work because there was nothing to do.
Right.
Now it's I have so much back office work, but I don't really have enough time to do the back office work because I'm doing all the things that bring the back office work. So I would say right now I'm in the most honest, authentic phase of admittance. And all I mean by that is Alan and I have had some really serious, heart-driven, adult, mature conversations of Alan said recently, he said, Kev, I'm always going to work more than you, brother. He said, I can't not. This is who I am. I can't not. I don't have to get motivated to get out of bed. I get pulled out of bed. That's not always it for me. Some days it is. Some days I wake up and it's like, all right, let's go. Other days I have to coax myself into motion. I just do. I'm not always motivated. I'm not always inspired. I don't always want to do it. I'm not always pulled. Sometimes I have to push myself. So I think the phase that I'm in right now I call it juggling more than balance. That just works for me. Is I want to make sure I'm at least able to take care of myself first. Because as an entrepreneur, somebody asked me recently, they said, if you had to be honest about what this has been like, what would you say? I would say martyrdom for the last 7 years. I come last. My sleep comes last. My nutrition comes last. My rest comes, it doesn't matter. My certainty comes last. I think there's a time and a place for that in everything, right? I think there's a time. I can only imagine being a parent. I'm not a parent. I can only imagine how hard it is to put yourself first. I can only imagine. But now that's kind of what we're trying to do, is because we realize the other way isn't sustainable. I could do that for those years, but now I'm married and now I have a household to take care of and I have 2 little kitties. Again, those are my children, right? And we have a bigger team and I have more responsibility and there's more holes in the boat if we don't pay attention. So now I'm in the phase of leading is just as, if not more important than doing. There are only a few things that only I can do. Nobody can do this. Nobody can take this spot and, okay, Kev can't make it, but Bob's going to come on and podcast for Kev, right? There's no pinch hitters in podcasting. But building a team and figuring out, oh, this person's really good at this. Okay, cool. They can run this and they can run this. So now is kind of the delegation / actually make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. We haven't been great at that. We feed the business before we feed ourselves. And that's one of the reasons we got here. So yeah, now it's very much, I look at my calendar. I say, all right, am I going to have time to eat today? All right, this is when I'll eat. Or I'll look at my calendar the night before and say, okay, when should I exercise based on where my calendar is? When am I going to be done to be able to spend time with my wife? That. And just as kind of a super specific, tactical, concrete example, now my calendar Monday through Friday is 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So you can book me on something from 10 a.m. till 5. My last call hopefully ends at 6. And then I have time to spend with my wife. If she's not home, I'll hang out by myself. I usually get up at 5 or 6 in the morning. I use those 4 hours or 5 hours to exercise, do back office work, and do deep work, get my stuff done. So I take care of me, I take care of the business, and then I go spend time and take care of my family and myself again.
What do you enjoy about now versus then? And what's something you enjoyed about then, kind of in the chaos when you were taking on everything and had no limits?
I feel like the stakes were much lower then. I was naive. I was very naive to what this was all going to take. So it was kind of fun to stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning podcasting and then get up at 7 the next day and go to the gym. There's a piece of me. So I used to live with my other best friend, Matt. And no matter what time I went to bed, I would get up at 4:30. I'd be out in the living room foam rolling by 5, and we'd be at the gym at 6. And there's a piece of me that misses that. It misses that unsustainable grind that is just brutal. I do miss that. What I like now is that I actually feel like I have direction and I know what this year is supposed to look like and I know what I'm supposed to do and I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. In the beginning, you're just figuring that out. There are certain things that I'm good at that Alan isn't as good and vice versa. I didn't know that in the beginning. So that's obviously important. And I think the biggest thing, for me at least, is I can actually pay my bills. I know that sounds probably super baseline simple, but I went 4 solid years, 3-4 solid years where it was a struggle. It was a struggle to pay everything that needed to get paid and take care of the business. And so for me, having some financial abundance is just, it's so valuable to me because I'm very certainty driven. And for most of my life, I didn't have financial abundance. And then when I did have it, it wasn't sustainable. And I had to trade in so much of what I valued to get it. So now it's actually, I get to do what I love and I get to make a living doing it. And with the living we make, we get to reinvest for impact. And it's become this really amazing thing that you can actually see how it works. So that's something I really enjoy about now. And I'm forced to learn about leadership. I'm not a natural leader. I'm very introverted, believe it or not. You may not guess that, but I am. And I just don't think leadership was something that comes naturally to me, and it's not something I'm naturally good at. So that's another phase I'm in, is I'm trying to learn as much about leadership as possible because we have a 22-person team. I never thought that was going to happen. I never thought I was going to be co-leading a large team like that. So that's super cool, but it also is a lot of responsibility that I don't ever want to lose sight of. I don't want to lose sight of the importance of that.
Yeah, and it's quite different too. You know, being a healthcare manager, I had 26 direct reports and 10 clinicians. And so, but, you guys have your own thing. And it's not like when they laid me off, they can just bring in another manager and cover.
Mm, yeah.
So, having, I mean, of course, there's Alan, but you being a core piece of the business, um, it makes it a lot harder to replace those skills and or leadership. But
Mm,
on that note, it kind of leads me into the question of, let's say a little bit then, but also now. So I've been sick this past weekend, and in doing this, I haven't been able, I had to take a few days to recover, and it kind of sucked, and I felt guilty, and I felt like I should be doing something, but then I'm like, nah, man, I'm really tired. Should I listen to my body? I try to be very like intuitive to my body. And there was
mm.
like 2 days ago, I mean, I slept almost all day. How do you deal with these setbacks that you don't necessarily build into a schedule? Because I think it's interesting is people with the entrepreneurial spirit, they want to be an entrepreneur because they want this freedom of their life and time. Yet we build ourselves these crazy schedules um, to be accountable to.
Yeah.
And then when we can't maintain the schedule or there's a disruption in the schedule, we can tend to take it out on ourselves.
Mm.
How do you approach that and deal with that? Like when you get sick or something and you need to take a few days off and it wasn't built in, and then how do you deal with it mentally?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. And I think a big piece of the answer revolves around self awareness. I think there's two types of people. I think there's people that naturally overdo it, and I think there's people that naturally underdo it. So you got to figure out what side of the coin you're on. If you naturally overdo it, you might want to be extra with, okay, I'm going to take it easy. If you naturally underdo it, you might, the first sign of a cough, you might say, it's time to shut it down, when that might not be true. So I think it starts with that. what is the default setting that you have? That's piece one. Piece two for me is I am very, very clear at this stage what the non negotiables are. The non negotiables are 8 episodes a week, 7 episodes for NLU and one for another one. Other than that, I batch my WhatsApp every day because we have a lot of clients and I want to make sure that's running. Other than that, though, if I'm like really suffering, that's kind of all I'll do. And the reason, and the guilt question is a great one because I used to get that. I used to get, well, you're not making progress and you're letting yourself down. Two schools of thought. One, you're not making progress in the business, but you are making progress for you. This is why I like juggling better than balance, because balance suggests that it's equal. Juggling suggests there's one ball in the air and there's one ball you got to focus on and there's another ball that just left your hand. I think it's that. I think the reason I'm not guilty is because I realize, less guilty, is because I realize just because I'm not working on the business does not mean I'm not working on myself. And just like when I R&R at night with my wife, that's not helping the business, but that is helping my relationship, which does help me, which does somehow help the business. So it's all connected, but if we're not aware of how it's connected, I think that's when there's guilt. So that's part one, or part two, or part three. I don't know how many parts I've said. The other thing that I always like to throw in there is it really depends on your core values and your core beliefs and your core aspirations. If you have massive, 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 massive goals, you are going to have to push through more than somebody who doesn't. That's my honest truth. I don't know how else to put it. When I did a bodybuilding show, I had to work out more than somebody who didn't. I had to track every calorie. I had to weigh myself because I'm competing for something different. So just being very honest with yourself, I think, is important too. If your goals aren't massive, you're not going to have to suffer as much. And good for you. If your goals are huge, you're going to have to do some stuff that some other people don't necessarily want to do. And then last thing. Just look at the patterns. I got COVID in 2021, I think. 2022. I don't remember when it was, but I got COVID. And I remember it was like 8 o'clock in the morning and I started to get a headache and my throat was sore. And I said, I'll figure this out later. And I'm pretty sure I worked like a 16-hour day that day. I'm sure that made it worse. I'm sure that didn't help. So that for me was a gentle reminder of, Kev, you are not a robot. You are not indestructible. We need to keep an eye on this. So I'm trying to play as much now for sustainability as efficiency. Sustainability is a very unsexy word that is super, super, super important. The best diet is the diet that you will do sustainably. The best cadence for podcasting is the cadence you can do sustainably. I think sustainability is the best way to look at that. Is what I'm doing sustainable? Yes or no? Okay, cool. Let me redesign. Then test it again. Then test it again. Then test it again. I don't necessarily work more than I used to. I work different than I used to. But last thing, I promise, I don't want to give that advice to somebody who's just starting. Because in the beginning, I worked when I was sick and I worked when I didn't want to and I worked on little sleep. I think there's certain times where you're going to have to do those hard yards. But knowing yourself is key and asking yourself, what's my default setting? If it rains, do I leave because it's like, it might rain today? Or am I out there hammering metal into the ground when there's lightning storms? That's probably not ideal either.
Yeah. Whenever it was interesting the other day, kind of when that happened, I was journaling. And as I was journaling, I was writing about this guilt. Yet I sat there and proceeded to list all the things I actually did towards the podcast. And I was like, oh, I actually did do a lot, but because I feel kind of crummy or I couldn't talk well, I couldn't record intros or outros. Because I sounded like Dickie Barrett from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. I was like, but when I listed it out, I kind of felt a little less guilty because, your mind will play tricks on you. And it kind of goes back to, sometimes giving yourself credit for what you do. What you do. Um,
We had a guest on early on, Richard, Lori Harder, and Lori said something I'll never forget, and this is very applicable to what we're talking about. She said consistent 70% days are better than spotty 100s.
oh,
Consistent 70% days. So that's almost it in my mind is some days you taking out the trash, it's going to be a 70% day. That's just what it's going to be that day. Not every day is going to be 100, nor do I think it should be because I don't know if it's sustainable.
when did you come up with, it's funny because I wrote down how did you balance then and now, but when did you adopt the term, the switch from balance to juggling?
When I realized that there is a detriment to choice. When I'm at the gym, unless my wife is with me, I'm not working actively on my relationship. When I am podcasting like this, I'm not working actively on my relationship or my fitness, but I'm working on the business. Yeah, I think of it as a red light, green light kind of. So it was just when I started to be very honest of the fact that if I work 18 hours a day every day, my relationship will suffer,
Right.
right? If I work 18 hours a day every day, my fitness is most likely going to suffer. I have to take the units of time, energy, effort, and focus that I have and put them into the right buckets at the right time. Because
It's
there's always, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, well, because with entrepreneurship, there's always this word balance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I would say some argue that there's really no such thing.
That's the way I feel. Because I feel like something's always falling. Because it kind of, if something is going up and you only have a finite amount of human resources, that means something has to be going down. Because you can't put in 10 into fitness and not take it out of somewhere else. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think for me, it helps me to look at that realistic because it is trade-off. I'm trading something off to be here right now. I can't be with my wife. I'm not at the gym, right? I'm not on a sales call. I'm not coaching. But for me, it always helps to just be honest with things because then I can make decisions more effectively. There's nowhere I'd rather be right now. I don't want to be at the gym. I want to be here. I'm present. I don't care about anything else. This is awesome. This is what I love to do, right? But you can take that too far as well. So yeah, I think it was just Alan and I were having a conversation. He was talking about how he didn't believe in balance. He said, I don't know. He said harmony. He said harmony is what lands for me. And I said, I don't like that. I like juggling. I think I understand harmony, but to me it's juggling because you're always going from one thing to another.
And I love that where you kind of correlated it to putting the right amount of energy into the right buckets or baskets at the right time. I
Mm,
think that's kind of important. You guys are kind of a staple of um, shorter episodes when I need a little boost. And then I listen to Rob Dial Jr., Mindset Mentor, quite a bit. And it's, similar things, but I kind of hear this, some recurring themes that I love to explore. And especially right now, one that I'm in that I feel like I heard three times this week on three different shows, and you guys being one of them was,
mm,
what are you going to stop doing? What are you going to continue doing? And then um, what do you want to do? Something new that you want to do.
mm.
So kind of reevaluating, what is it like every 90 days? You guys kind of take an inventory. What can you automate, delegate,
Yeah.
eliminate, kind of a
Yep.
thing, or the 3Ds, maybe.
Yeah, that's Alan's thing is I don't even know if I know him. Yeah, I don't one of them's delegate. Yeah, I don't know. Alan would know better than I. But yeah, every 90 days we check in, we set new goals, we reflect on the previous quarter, and then things change so fast. That's another difference between now and back then. A few years ago, my habits were changing weekly. It would be like 1 week, it would be track this and do this and exercise this and reach out to this blah blah blah, reach out to X amount of people. And then eventually it changed into like these are the three best uses of your time. And then these are like your 15 habits you're going to do every day. But if you could only choose, make sure you get your big three done. The habits are smaller. But in the beginning, when I was like really doing it, I had a phase where I tracked 26 habits a day,
Wow.
100%. I didn't miss for like 6 months maybe. That was a really good learning lesson for me because that doesn't mean I was making the most progress I've ever made. It means on paper it looked like I was making the most progress I ever made. So that's another important thing is sometimes less and more focused is better than more and less focused. And that's another, we're really in that right now, where if we're not putting time into a department, like we have a department that we do speeches. So we have someone on the team that will reach out for speeches and take care of that. We said, don't put any time into that right now. We're not going to worry about that. Let's do the things that we're already rolling, that we already have momentum on. Let's focus on that for now. You can build too quick. And if you build too quick, things get too thin and things kind of fall apart. So we're trying to avoid that. So right now we're in the less is more, but let's focus on more better. Sorry, let's focus on less better. That's kind of the phase we're in right now.
And how many of those 26 habits have you kind of kept, or you kind of throw some out, bring some back in, or what's your habit list up to about now? Like do you do like 3 non-negotiables a day, 5? I know Alan does quite a few on his tracking that he doesn't
Yeah,
miss.
yeah. His 5 to thrive, that's
Yes.
slowly taking his life. I probably have, I don't know, I probably have like 18 habits on my spreadsheet, but there's really, some of them are super easy. One of them is track listens. Track listens is not hard. That
Right.
stayed. I've been tracking listens every day for however many years. I don't know. That's easy. I weigh myself every day. I track my calories gently. I'm not measuring out every single one. I put my sleep score in. What did I get for a sleep score last night with my ring?
You
So
use the Aura Ring,
I
or have
use
you
the
tried
Aura ring.
Whoop?
Yep.
How's it work?
No, the good. Yeah, yeah. Big fan. Big fan. I can't wear it during jujitsu because it might rip my finger skin off. So
Hmm.
that's not ideal. But yeah, big fan. Huge fan of it. So yeah, most of the habits that I started with are there in some way, shape, or form. The only real big, I'd say big three I have, one is WhatsApp. I am in WhatsApp every single day, making sure that the departments I'm leading are going fine, making sure clients are taken care of every single day. That happens. I batch my email every single day. That happens every single day. And then my wife and I play the gratitude game before we go to bed every single night. And if we miss, we catch up. Like if we miss tonight, we'll do 2 tomorrow. So I would say those are kind of like the 3 non negotiables. Exercise should be higher. But again, we just went through a season of growth with a business where I sacrificed my health for a little while to get to where we are. So I need to get back into that bucket. But I would say those are kind of the big 3 right now.
Now, are you batching and all that even on vacation days, or
Yes.
okay?
Yeah, I'm going to Scotland next week. I will be waking up at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, making sure that's all taken care of, and then I can enjoy whiskey and travel and dinner and all that later.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's a good thing? Because I know, like, I went to Disney one summer, and I can remember doing payroll for my team one morning while sitting at Disney because I could have passed it off to another manager, I'm sure, but
Mm.
there's nothing to piss off your team more than not getting them paid correctly or on time and having to wait 2 weeks for a correction.
Mm.
But how do you feel about, I mean, do you have any qualms with it, or is it just kind of part of your fiber and your being?
Uh, I've learned to accept it. I'll say that. I don't love it. No, I don't love it, but it is one of those things where if I say I want what I say I want, or if
Right.
I actually want what I say I want, these are the things
You got to do.
necessary. Yeah, these are the things necessary. I remember when I did my bodybuilding show, I went to, I think, 2 or 3 weddings. There were 2 or 3 birthdays, including my own, and it was 4th of July.
Hey, after you're done listening to this amazing podcast, be sure to give it a 5-star rating, then go check out the other podcasts in the Podcast Connection Network, including my own, Everything's Connected. Check us all out. The link will be in the episode's description.
And I remember all of those times saying, like, oh, let me pull out my chicken, broccoli, and rice, and everybody else is eating whatever they're eating. But it was, people said, like, why are you doing this to yourself? It's like, this is what I signed up for. This is what I said. I want to win the show. I wasn't kidding. And my coach told me what it was going to take. He said, you're going to suffer more than anyone else if you want to win. Alan is my coach in many ways, most ways. The same thing. He said, Kev, if you really want to be as successful as you say and you want to impact as many people as you say, these are the things that we're going to have to do. And I said, all right, cool. I'll sign on the dotted line. If that ever changes, I'll let you know. But no, I think I've become okay with it. And I think the other piece for me is, well, I do want to travel more as we continue to grow and evolve and we have the means to do it. I do want to travel more. My wife loves traveling. So there's a piece of me that needs to prove to myself that when I do travel, I still take care of the most important things, because this business is relatively new. We're only 7 years old.
Right.
So Alan's going to be traveling next week too. He's going to work while he's gone. So yeah, it's something that I know is kind of a necessary discomfort.
Now I'm certain the answer would be yes, but I mean, have you put in the works of possible delegation or?
Yeah, there's a lot that's delegated, but the things that I'm doing are the things that really can't necessarily be delegated. The coaching stuff.
Right.
So right now we produce 50 podcasts, and I'm coaching all of those people in some way, shape, or form. So that really is the one thing that nobody else will be able to do to the degree I can, just because they don't have the experience. Other than that, though, yeah, a lot of it is delegated. It's much different now than it used to be. I used to have to do every day many things, like Sunday included. Now for me, Sundays are pretty light. I come in the office for like 20 minutes and do a couple things that need to be done, and then I'm good for the day. So it's very much delegated compared to what it was in the past.
Now, do you ever miss the beginning times, the craziness, the grind, the maybe feeling like you're getting more done than you actually got done?
Yeah, no, it does feel good. The bliss on that end does feel good. I'll tell you what I do miss is the sense of freedom. I had a moment recently where I was thinking to myself, I almost don't ever do anything outside of the house after it gets dark. I don't ever go out at night. Ever. So rare. Because it almost feels like I'm not allowed to. In a way. I just haven't done it in so long. Like my wife and I will go out to dinner. But I'm not coming up with plans at 7:00 on a Friday. I'm already in bed. I'm ready. I'm ready to get down and just hang out. I'm turning it down. So that there's always a responsibility and there's always a pressure that never, ever, ever turns off. And it's always in the back of my head. Probably not to the degree it is for Alan, but it's always in the back of my head. It wasn't like that in the beginning because I didn't understand the downside of that not being there. So I do miss that. I miss the kind of the ignorance that I had, the naivete that I had in the beginning, where now I'm abundantly aware of, if you work really hard, this is what a year looks like. Oh, if you take time off and you don't put it in, this is what a year looks like. Which one of those years do you like better? The first one. Oh, okay. But I didn't know that in the beginning. In the beginning, I thought things were going to work faster than they did. So I do miss that a little bit, yeah.
Well, what would you tell 2017 Kevin?
It just in general?
Yeah.
Ooh. Goodness. I don't think you'd listen because he was stubborn. I don't know if he'd listen, so let me throw that out there to start. I would tell him, Kev, you understand how fast and how dramatically your body can change. Your mind is the same way. I know you haven't read a book since high school, and I know you think books are bad, but your life and your future can look drastically different if we just start with some very small habits. You are so dialed in when it comes to fitness. You are the most dialed in person you know. But outside of that, you are all over the place. You don't know where your money's going. You're not doing anything for your future. We gotta jump out of the present and jump out of seeking pleasure all the time and understand that if we don't plan for the future is just going to happen. If we don't create the future, we're just going to arrive at a future. So it's your job, Kev. You're going to regret it if you don't do something different. That would be a big piece of it. And it would really be, Kev, I know you don't feel smart, and I know you feel stupid, and I know you didn't go to college. You don't have to be any of those things. You don't have to be stupid. You don't have to feel stupid. You're not stupid. You're just not focused on learning. So the way you feel is based on the fact that you're not doing the things necessary to not feel the way you feel. Here's a book, friend. Give it a gander. Or here's an audiobook. I like audiobooks more than I like books. So just listen to this and don't expect it to change your life immediately, but write down some nuggets that you take away and then see what happens. That's what I would tell him, because that's what really shifted for me when I started listening to books and reading. But it all started with the understanding. I remember Alan said, "Hey man, first book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, give this a listen." And I remember having a conversation. I said, "I don't understand, like, what's the point? What's the point? What's the point of listening to this book?" And I was serious. I wasn't being facetious. I was serious because I didn't understand how malleable my brain was. So that would be, would he listen? Richard, I don't think so. He was a little bit stubborn. And then I probably would pair that with, Kev, I know you think the results you're getting today are based on what you did yesterday. We got to take a look back and figure out where the traumas and triggers and where that stuff came from. I wish I went inward sooner, because if I went inward sooner, I think I would have been more well-rounded. I would have been healthier internally. All of that. My mental health probably would have been better. So that's another thing I would say to 2017 Kev.
Yeah, I suffer the opposite in terms of I have a master's degree and I don't do anything professionally with it, but as I've thought about this journey more and more, I realize, that 15 months of graduate school, kind of what it taught me was my ability to grind while having a full-time job, while managing a family, a 1-year-old daughter, moving to a new place, waking up at 5 a.m, doing homework, spending weekends, late nights, and it's kind of taught me a set of principles that some people learn through careers or however it is they learn it. I'm not knocking education or, saying it's required, but, for me, it really it's given me some belief in you can do the work. And if you do the work and keep doing the work and do it well, then in a certain amount of time, maybe that grind will stop, or not stop, but get easier, or that set of lessons will come to an end. Let's put it that way. And I kind of feel like, the thing with podcasting is it's a little different because there is no like end of the program. There's no like 15-month and you get a diploma. I'm sure there's certain thresholds, kind of like you guys have. You reach them, but then that's the set of those lessons. And now you guys are going to be on to the $1 million and 1 million plus, lessons and whatever that entails. But on that note, what's for the future of NLU?
This is always a very challenging question for two reasons. One, I don't know, because Alan knows more than I do. That I always put that out there. He's the visionary. I'm the day-to-day. I try to keep things together in the short run. More of what we're doing, better, getting better at all the things that we do. It's really that. I mean, there's nothing crazy that's going to happen, most likely. You probably won't even notice anything in the next year. It'll probably look exactly the same, but behind the scenes, we'll try to get better as leaders. We'll try to continue to increase our characters, be better as men, better as partners, be better speakers, be better podcasters. So every single day, we're trying to get a little bit better. But in terms of external, what you'll see, probably very little. I'm going to try to write a book on podcasting at some point. Am I going to do it this year? I'd like to. I don't know if that's possible based on everything going on. I'd like to do it. So that might be something you'll see. But other than that, probably the least sexy answer of all time, Richard. You're probably not going to see a lot different, but I guarantee you behind the scenes in the strings and in the backdrop and in the costume room and in the all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes is improving as we go.
And what kind of fulfillment do you get? What besides, let's say, some of the milestones and whatnot, what's your daily fulfillment? What keeps getting, when you have those tough times, what gets you out of bed every morning besides Alan?
Yeah, Alan, for sure. I know I seem like an entrepreneur and a business owner. Trust me, I have a boss more than you realize, but it's great. It's good. It's exactly what I need. When I'm doing really well or not so well emotionally, I reflect. So when we crossed 1 million and 1 million, I looked back. I went back and I looked at all the old stuff. I looked at my old content. I look at my Instagram back in the day all the time. I don't want to forget what it was like. But that also gives me the foresight to say, Kev, this was only 3 years ago. 3 years ago, that's not that long in the grand scheme of things. So a lot can change. A lot has changed, but imagine what the future can hold. Imagine that. So that's the thing that gets me out of bed when I don't want to get out of bed, for sure. The fulfillment thing is, it's different every day. I love recording podcast episodes. I love taking something complex and trying to make it simple and trying to make it land. I love that. I'm something about that. I don't know where I get that from, but I love it. That's super, super exciting to me. Genuinely, this is something new. A lot of my fulfillment comes from talking to people like you. I get off interviews and I will literally, I don't know if my wife hears me, but I'll say, oh my goodness, what an awesome human. I say that so many times. I have met so many amazing, humble, grateful, service-driven humans by just being on podcasts. And that wouldn't be possible if I didn't do a podcast as much as we have. So I get a lot of fulfillment from that. So much fulfillment. We get a lot of really kind words from the team behind the scenes. That's super fulfilling to me. And hearing from the community is always super fulfilling, right? I didn't start this for me. Alan didn't start this for himself. We started this to have an impact. So getting to see the actual real proof that we're having an impact, that's, you want to talk about gasoline on a fire. That's something
To see that added value.
Yeah. I don't know if that's something you can replicate, because it's just a suggestion of it's just a suggestion that what you're doing is the right thing in the right way.
Right.
Just like if you painted a portrait and you said, I'd really like to get $5,000 for this. And someone came to you and said, this is the most beautiful portrait I've ever seen in my entire life. I'll give you $5,000. You're in your mind, you're thinking, wow, this person got value from the thing that I hope they get value from. Amazing. The money is a nice piece of that too, but that's not what it's about. It's about I feel so seen right now. I feel like what I put out into the world landed in the way I want it to land. So yeah, that. And episode 7, back in the day, it was the Hyperconscious podcast back then. I said that in my future, if I could wake up when I want, go to sleep when I want, podcast with amazing people, go to the gym when I want, spend time with the people I love, and get to be my own boss, that would be the best thing ever. And now I get to work from my pajamas if I want. That is so easy to lose sight of. So easy. But that is something that is super, super fulfilling to me as well.
All right. Last question.
Okay.
Tricky one. Maybe.
Let's do it.
If you weren't Kevin from NLU, what would you be doing?
I think about this a lot. Would I be good enough to do it? I don't know. I'd either be rapping or I'd be fighting. Those would be probably the two. In high school, I trained to fight professionally. I wanted to be a professional mixed martial arts fighter. And I've been writing and rapping, for lack of better phrasing, since I was like 16. I just never had the courage to call it that. And I never had the courage to record anything because I thought people wouldn't take me seriously. So that, yeah, I can imagine walking out and a stadium chanting your name because they like what you do, they like the music you create, or they like the style of fighter you are. I don't know what happens after we die, Richard. But if we come back as something, those are going to be the first two. It's going to be fighter and a rapper. Those are going to be the first two.
Now, are you mostly are you grappling focused or Muay Thai or what?
Back in the day, it was a lot. Now I still do jujitsu. So I
Mhm.
do a lot of grappling now. I always wanted to be a stand-up fighter because my grandfather was a professional boxer. So I always had that. I don't know. I mean, yeah, submitting someone is cool, but knocking someone out, that's got to be better. So I was always partial to that. So I think that would be my style if I could go back and do it over. But it was hard because then I realized, well, my brain's actually something valuable now for me. So I that's dangerous, right? That's why I went back to grappling because it's less likely of head injuries.
Yeah, but yeah, and it's interesting though. Definitely the evolution of fighters. I mean, you're seeing fighters go a lot longer.
Mm,
I grew up taking martial arts. I worked at a mixed martial arts training center in Austin as well.
nice.
And so I got free grappling till I broke some toes, rolled up with someone. But yeah, it's, you definitely see fighters lasting a lot longer, like Max Holloway.
Yeah, he's something. I don't understand him.
Yeah, where they're getting, I mean, that was just bananas that last fight. But
I
yeah,
lost it.
I
I
was
almost
like,
threw my Taco Bell everywhere. I lost it.
my dad and I were sitting there I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, didn't Gaethje just knock out like Dustin Poirier? I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, Max has kind of been up and down,
Yeah,
and then the next day I was like, because yeah, I didn't rent it. I think I was doing something, and I woke up and I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
I
so
lost it.
bananas. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then of course, did you listen to the episode Joe Rogan and Max Holloway?
I listened to a little bit. I used to be a huge Joe Rogan guy, and I
Hmm.
just, as time has gone and I've evolved and he's evolved, it just hasn't, it's not the same for me anymore.
What are you looking for nowadays when you listen to a podcast? What's your go-to?
I do not listen to any
Okay.
other than I try to review ours to practice the
Hmm.
craft. Other than that, I'm listening to audiobooks. Like I'm listening to Leadership right now by John Maxwell. What was the last one I was listening to? Oh my goodness, one of the sales books by I cannot remember his name. We had him on the podcast several times. It's either sales, leadership, or business right now, and I'd rather just go to the old fundamentals
Hmm.
than anything else. So yeah, not a lot of podcasts from me.
Yeah, it's kind of been a shift for me where I used to listen to a lot. Now I listen to more for research, and then
Yeah.
I'll throw in a few that usually something that makes me laugh.
Oh, that's
Um,
always
every,
good.
yeah, every once in a while I need a funny kind of let loose. Maybe take an edible and laugh
I
and watch
I support
ridiculousness.
I support that. I watched Airplane the first time from 1980 recently. And my goodness, has a lot changed. But just the simple stupidity of a lot of those jokes. I ordered breakfast. My wife was away for the weekend. I ordered breakfast. I watched this movie, and I was happy as a clam.
Sometimes that's the best way. Sometimes it's
100%.
simplicity, kind of like what you said. And after working a corporate job for all the years that I did, and even the past couple years, even as tumultuous as it's been, the things I've really appreciated are just getting to do this, getting to see my daughter every morning, getting to take her to school, pick her up if I
Mm,
need to, want to, having the freedom. I'm going to a reggae show tonight of the guy I interviewed last week,
nice.
um, with a friend who I've known since we were in first grade. So we've been friends for 41 years. And so, these little things like that, um, have just been great and fulfilling, even though the money's not here yet, but that's never really why I started it, why I did it. And
Mm,
um, I don't really think about that, but there's always the discussion of, you know, do I need to be selling something, some coaching services or something else in order to have the podcast, kind of a thing.
yeah, that's a conversation a lot of people have. It depends on sustain. Is it sustainable without it? It's always that. It's always the question of is what you're doing sustainable.
Right. Sustain, and kind of my thing, you know, actually, let's break it down for 1 second.
Let's do it.
Sustainability versus consistency. What's the difference?
Oh, wow.
Because I say consistency was my word for the year, kind of like instead of having a New Year's resolution, my word is consistency to do whether it's fitness, because I've lost 40 something pounds, gone from 9
Congrats.
prescriptions to 2.
Nice.
The podcast is, it's 9 months old, but has really grown noticeably if you listen to episodes and watch from January till now.
Mm.
So it's consistency over time. So I'm kind of curious, when you mention sustainability, I think of consistency, but surely there's got to be a fine tunement between there.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think consistency is the ability to do something in repeated fashion over and over and over and over again. Sustainability is choosing the right amount of that thing to do where you can actually do it over and over and over and over again. So, 7 episodes a week for us is sustainable to do consistently, but in the beginning it wasn't. What we could do consistently from a sustainable perspective was 1, and then it was 2, then it was 3, then it was 4 or 5, however we jumped. So that's kind of how I think about it. You have to be able to do something. It has to be sustainable for you to start and maintain before you can actually do it consistently, is my perspective on it.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, because I've gotten so many guests through Podmatch that I'm considering going to twice a week. And, it was like, what can you consistently do? What can you consistently put out at it? Yada, yada, yada. And so that was kind of where my question came from of, how do you, so figuring out
resources too. Maybe, so I don't know if consistency necessarily takes into in resources. It's like you can consistently put in the effort to do 2 episodes a week. Can you sustainably support it based on the amount of money it will cost, potentially?
Right.
Or the amount of time it'll take. Yeah. It's great. I'm going to have to think about that, because next time somebody asks me that question, I'm going to have a hopefully somewhat reasonable answer to add value.
Have to ask Alan about it. See what his numbers
He
say.
didn't know. I'm the one who put sustainability first. He thought consistency was first, and I said, no way consistency is first. Sustainability has to be first. I just don't know how to explain it yet.
The funniest thing I heard this morning, I think I actually laughed. I was on the treadmill, and when I heard him say, what did he say? Well, when you talk to engineers and you're like, when do I talk to engineers?
Yeah.
Never. I'm like the same way. I'm like, when am I talking to an engineer?
Right. He's like, well, people do it all the time. When? I have never, ever in my life, who do I even call to talk to an engineer?
You call
Am I working on a bridge? Yeah, right. He's on speed dial for me.
Oh my God, that was so funny. Well, anyway, I appreciate you coming on.
Of course.
Any questions for me?
Yeah, let's do an edible cast in the future.
Yeah. I haven't done one yet, and
me either.
I want to, but I have to be around. I have to be in the right situation, because,
of course,
sometimes whenever I don't know. Sometimes late at night, the edibles. The other night gave me, I get imposter syndrome.
Okay.
So how do you deal with that?
Imposter syndrome? Make friends with it. Yeah, make friends with it. Yeah, my relationship with imposter syndrome is, number 1, it's a good thing. Number 2, it is representative of growth. And number 3, if it goes away, it means you're not growing anymore. So I have really tried to make friends with it. And that has really, really helped me. And my tactic in the moment is I try to look at the most recent and relevant proof. So when's the most recent time I did the thing that I feel like I have imposter syndrome in? Well, I went on a podcast recently. Cool. Based on what I'm thinking about, how relevant is that? Well, I felt like I was out of my league. It went really well, and there's no reason today won't go well. I was getting ready to go on a podcast one time. You might have heard me say this on another show or our show. I don't know when I said it. But I was going on a podcast, and the host was a doctor that worked for NASA.
Yes.
They were a space doctor. That is a real thing. I did not know that was a real thing. It makes sense, but I thought that was stuff you see in movies. And I had that. There's got to be another Kevin Palmieri. Something got mixed up. They sent me the email. It's not supposed to be me. But I said to myself, recent relevant proof. I was on a podcast recently with a doctor of psychology or something, and I had the same moment where who am I to talk about any of this? I didn't even go to college. And then I did the same thing and looked back, and that's helped me. That's helped me a ton because there's so much proof. We all have so much proof. We just tend not to look at it. But the proof is there. Now, when it comes to edible podcast, I mean, that's a completely different conversation, right? Because maybe you don't have the proof yet, but I'd be happy to be the guinea pig for the first proof if you need it.
I'm always a little more laid back.
100%.
All right, man. I'm off to a reggae show, and I'm gonna enjoy some time and get some downtime, and I hope you do the same and have a great weekend.
You as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. Wonderful conversation. You're a good human. So when we get off here, I'm gonna say, what an awesome human.
I appreciate it, man.
Of course, my friend.
Thanks
I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Me at ease. All right, man.
Of course.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, you've made it this far, which means you're probably a super fan of the show. That's amazing, and I really appreciate your support. To keep up with all the latest updates, make sure you're following the show on social media. You can find all the links in the bio. And if you've been enjoying the content, I'd be so grateful if you could take a minute and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people who might love the show as much as you do. Also, don't forget to tell one friend about the show as well. Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. And if you're feeling extra generous, check out the link tree in the bio where you can find a link to donate. Every little bit helps me keep creating the content you love. Thanks for being an awesome superfan. I couldn't do it without you.
Let's go. Asteroid of Fear.